thrilled to be here. I think this is a great opportunity. I'm going to forego the mic unless someone in the back waves their hand and says they can't hear me. The irony of the fact that you ask an old guy from the Army and the Pentagon to come to a Navy town and talk to a group of pacifists and young people is not lost on me. I was originally concerned a little bit about showing up in uniform because I thought, oh, you know, they have certain fashion dictates there. And when I saw as many people as there were here who have decided to wear white shoes after Labor Day, I knew that would not be the only fashion faux pas in the room. So what I want to talk to you about is why young people join Al Qaeda. I did a study of this phenomenon that goes back a very long way, originally to something that haunted me when I was a cadet at the military academy, which was your paper being returned with RTP at the top of it. What that meant was read the problem. It meant that the answer that you had provided was, while a brilliant answer, it was not the answer to the question that was asked. It was that approach that I took to my study of foreign fighters in the Middle East. I was tasked while deployed overseas with reducing the flow of foreign fighters into Iraq. These were people who had made a decision to leave the relative safety of their home country and come someplace and fight. It became very clear to me that the more we tried to influence those people to stop, the less we knew and understood about why they did what they did. Why do people make that decision? And it is only through a complete understanding of why people make a decision that you can seek to understand the cause of the decision and the route to change in that decision in the future. So I undertook a study which included about 2,000 foreign fighters, people who had left their homes and decided to take up arms against the United States. It's an imperfect sample. For the social scientists in the room, I will apologize immediately. It is only the 2,000 that we could find. Suicide bombers do not give post-operations interviews, so you don't get to talk to those guys. We don't catch everybody who tries, so it is an imperfect sample. It is also 10 times larger than any other sample of foreign terrorists that has ever been undertaken. So I can say with at least relative confidence that we have thoroughly studied the problem, that we have looked at why people do the thing that they do in this case. Two things jumped out at me. First was the complete misunderstanding of what we talk about when we talk about Al Qaeda and what we talk about when we talk about the motivation of foreign terrorists. We talk about Al Qaeda, strategic leadership, the affiliated and associated movements, AQAP, Al-Shabaab, etc. and so forth. Those independent adherents, the so-called lone wolves, the person who, without ever having personal physical contact with the organization, decides to make a change in his life. And probably the most important aspect of it, Al-Qaeda the ideology. Al-Qaeda the organization may come and may go. Al-Qaeda the ideology is a thought. It is an idea. It is an approach to the way the world should operate that may not wax and wane with the numbers of people that are involved in the organization. The idea remains. So in many cases, what we have to do is understand the idea behind Al-Qaeda, not the individuals. Several things I found out in talking to these guys that they were not. And these are popular myths that I think a lot of people see and believe when they see someone from Al-Qaeda because they don't fully understand. First thing is, a lot of people think, oh, they're just crazy. Someone who puts a bomb on himself and gets on an airplane is nuts. Absolutely not. There was no evidence of clinical psychosis in any one of the 2,032 people that I studied. None. You cannot be psychotic and function well inside an organization that relies on secrecy and trust and movement in clandestine fashion. It just doesn't work. You're quickly weeded out of the organization long before you become an effective member. They don't even look for, they don't attempt to recruit anyone who is crazy. It is not a religious phenomenon. It is not a religious phenomenon. Islam did not cause terrorism, period. What we find in the zealotry that these young men exhibited was a skewed version of Islam inserted in the head of someone who did not have a full and comprehensive understanding of his own religion. They would, to use a term that may be more familiar to some of us, have been considered, Christmas and Easter followers if they had been Catholics. They didn't have a strong upbringing in their religion or their faith. So when someone comes along with a skewed version of that, it's easy to believe. They could none of them fully explain what Islam meant, but almost to a man, they could recite about 20 of the exact same verses, the ones that had been drilled so consistently into their heads as the way that the religion was supposed to operate. It reinforced and justified an ideology of hatred and action that they could use. It is obviously a religious justification. But before they made the decision, before they stepped across the threshold into terrorism and decided that they were going to do this, before they said, hey, tell me about this jihad thing, they didn't truly understand their own religions. They're not poor. It's not an economic phenomenon. This is one of the biggest problems with some of our solutions. Because when we say it's an economic phenomenon, these are just the poor dead-enders. They're scraped up off the streets to go out there and fight for al-Qaeda. It's not true. We found were wealthy, poor, middle class, guys who just got promoted at work. They spanned the economic spectrum. There was an air of hopelessness about their economic situation that they did have, regardless of their economic station. So even the wealthy among them felt like they would not live as good a life as their father had lived. Felt like they did not have the ability to control their own economic destiny. The difference between poverty and enslavement. Okay, poverty is a temporary condition, enslavement is forever. These people felt a little bit enslaved, even the wealthy ones. But they were not all universally poor. Not heavily recruited. They sought out al-Qaeda. They asked to become. They looked for information. Part of why the internet is such an important recruiting tool for al-Qaeda is because they're looking for something. And it is the what are they looking for that defines them. It is the what do they want from the world that got them to make the decision. And that's the most important aspect of it. And they're not everywhere. Okay? 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, and a microscopically small percentage of that have decided to join al-Qaeda. Which means they're not ubiquitous, they're not around every tree, and we do not need to react in panic as if they were everywhere. Because if we react in panic as if they were everywhere, sadly that feeds into their ideology that gets them where they want to be. That they are a ubiquitous force. Okay, four seekers. I tell you, they want something, they are looking for something, they are seeking something. So I broke them down into four seekers. There are seekers of revenge. They're looking for an outlet to a frustration that they don't understand. They're not happy with the world, and they want to lash out against that world. They want to lash out and say, this isn't right, I got to fix it somehow. They understand, just like you and I understand, that individual activity is not going to solve a problem, but a dramatic act by an individual can spur mass action. Okay? One self-immolating fruit vendor did not create the whole phenomenon of Arab Spring. Populations created that. Dr. King did not single-handedly initiate civil rights in America. A large group of people did. Okay? These people believe the same thing, that their action will be something that spurs many others to act. Okay, so the revenge seeker is looking to lash out at a system that he can't seem to get himself around. The status seeker doesn't believe that the world perceives him in the way that he perceives himself. He's better than he's being given credit for. The world looks at him and says, that is a problem. That is something I don't like. That is an ugliness in the world. And he says, wait a minute, I'm good, I have value, I have an opinion that matters, I have something to offer. Why doesn't the world see that in me? One of them said in a fairly famous interview, I tried to speak out and no one listened. I tried to scream and no one would hear me. They have to listen to me now. And then he blew himself up. That's a powerful idea, that you can't be heard. The identity seeker. This was, to me, the amazing largest group of the ones of the 2,000 that I studied, was somebody who wants to identify himself with something. He wants to be a part of an organization or a movement. He joined Al Qaeda because it is an aspirational brand. It is something that put itself on a pedestal and said, reach for this if you're good enough. Reach for this if you can. And he wanted to aspire to belong to that. He joined Al Qaeda because it was available to him and it gave him an identity, a club to belong to, and that identity projected for him something about him. So he joined Al Qaeda, the same reason that some people join the marching band or the chess club or any other group that forms their identity and defines who they are and defines to the world who they are, because he was looking for an identity. And then a very, very small percentage of the population studied were thrill seekers, guys that were just looking for the adventure of jihad. The easiest to turn away once they realize the reality of jihad, which is, it's not nearly as fun as it looks like in the posters. That was a very small percentage, and surprisingly small when we look at the total.